Shalom and welcome to today's Middle East Report. In this programme today we'll be discussing what are the opportunities and the challenges facing Israel and the Jewish community in 2019. Well, welcome to the programme. And today is a good friend of mine, also a good friend of the Middle East Report, Michael McCann, the director and founder of Israel-Britain Alliance. Welcome to the first programme we've done together in 2019.
Great to be here, Simon, and best wishes for New Year to you and all Revelation TV viewers.
Excellent. So can you give us an update, Michael, on the work of IBA, some of your latest campaigns, and what are your main campaign objectives for 2019?
Well, our campaigns are always a mixture of set events which we know are going to happen in the calendar, mixed in with reacting to events, and that's why I can't be completely specific about what will take place and when. But lobbying and political lobbying, Simon, is like the Forth Road Bridge. It's the old joke about painting the Forth Road Bridge. Once you get to the end, you have to start again at the beginning. So we consistently have to go back to the issues that we're raising. So we will be touching upon again Israel Apartheid Week, which we await to see and hear about what new lies our opponents are going to talk about Israel on. We're also going to keep in our sights the BBC with a very successful BBC bias campaign last year. You'll recall that you fronted a video in that campaign, which was first class, and we really generated a lot of correspondence between supporters of Israel in the UK, their members of parliament, and the BBC, and they really get exposed in that campaign because, if you recall, Fran Unsworth, the head of BBC News, made this statement. She said there is no right or wrong chronological order of events. I'm sure your viewers will be as amazed at that comment as I was when I first read it. But it demonstrates how out of touch the BBC can be when they think they can report the events in the context that they wish to report, rather than the actual events, how they're taking place on the ground. In addition, we know that the government is very close to making the decision on Al-Quds and Hezbollah, issues that we have repeatedly returned to since we started our work in February 2016. And again, we'll be visiting those issues again during the course of 2019. But ultimately, what we always must remain vigilant about is if Israel comes under attack. In 2018, it was the fabricated demonstrations, so-called protests at the border with Gaza, where Hamas put their people into the firing line and caused all sorts of problems with Israel's security, with the goal of breaching the border, getting to the civilians behind the border and killing them. And that's what it's all about. So therefore, we anticipate that 2019 is going to be a busy year, but we look forward in meeting those challenges and working with Revelation TV to bring your viewers the most up-to-date news about what's going on.
Excellent, which is really good. Michael, I suppose the other issue we have to say about how important it is that our wonderful viewers who have a tremendous love for Israel and the Jewish people get politically active. I know that a lot of them have, and a lot of them do, but how essential is someone who's so passionate about politics, and you've dedicated your entire life to politics, and now you're dedicating your life to standing with Israel. Why is it so important that they get involved in the political process and get in touch with their political representatives in Parliament to make a difference and give Israel a voice where it matters most in the seat of power in this country?
One simple answer, Simon, that's what the other side do. The reason that the other side have had a narrative that has actually gripped elements of our civic society, like the trade union movement and like our politicians, is because they have been bombarding them with false narratives about Israel and created narratives about the Palestinian people, not least of which is that there once was a place called Palestine that was a democratic state. There's many people, believe it or not, that actually think that happened. And so therefore the only way that you can combat that message and temper that message with our politicians is to tell them the truth. And, you know, and one of the great advantages that we have in terms of what we believe in in terms of our Christian beliefs and our beliefs in democracy and freedom and fairness, is that Israel stands for all those things. And therefore we, with a clear conscience, can campaign strongly for it. But we have to tell our politicians what we're thinking. Otherwise, the only things that they will hear is the lies and the distortions from our opponents.
Let's have a look now at this excellent video produced by Michael and Israel-Britain Alliance, and it talks about the importance of engaging with our political representatives in Parliament.
Do you know where decisions are made in our country? They're made in the town halls and the country parliaments and assemblies of Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, and they are made in the United Kingdom Parliament in London. The UK Parliament has been described as the mother of all parliaments because many other countries in the world have copied our democracy. In Parliament, our MPs make decisions every day about matters that affect our lives at home and abroad. Did you know that you can give your MP your opinion on any issue and ask them to influence and change policy? It's called lobbying, and anyone can do it. Here's how it works. Let's pick an issue. Let's say you have just found out that the Palestinian Authority is paying convicted terrorists monthly salaries using British aid funds. Dear my MP, I think it's unacceptable for the British government to give aid to the Palestinian Authority when they pay salaries to convicted terrorists. As my MP, I want you to raise this issue with the minister responsible, bring it to the attention of the House of Commons, and have the aid payment suspended until this unacceptable behaviour stops. Yours sincerely. When MPs receive correspondence from their constituents, they are duty-bound to respond and deal with their constituents' requests. Dear Minister, my constituent has discovered that the Palestinian Authority is misusing British aid money. Convicted criminals are being paid with the support of British taxpayers' money. What are you doing about it? Yours sincerely, my MP. They can raise the issue in the House of Commons chamber at Prime Minister's question time. Prime Minister, can you explain why you are allowing British taxpayers' money to be misused by the Palestinian Authority? Or MPs can register the issue for a debate to take place in Parliament, where a government minister must respond. But what does all this achieve? Does it actually make a difference? The answer is yes, it produces results. Today I have made a decision to suspend direct aid to the Palestinian Authority until they stop paying terrorists and supporting violence. Today, I have made a decision that Britain will not be sending a delegation to the deeply flawed Middle East Peace Conference in Paris. Britain is proud of the Balfour Declaration and our role in creating the nation-state of Israel. And all of this starts with one email, which in turn becomes thousands of emails that in turn create change. How do we know this? Because I didn't make these examples up. People power made these things happen in our Parliament. And the Israel-Britain Alliance will help you ensure that your voice is heard. We can't stay silent. Join the Israel-Britain Alliance today at www.israelbritain.org.uk.
Excellent. Couldn't be simpler, could it? Michael, that was a fantastic video. I know you produced that a couple of years ago, but I think it's also very important to remind our viewers again how easy it is to contact our Member of Parliament. And can you explain how easy that is?
Absolutely. Well, you know, I remember writing the script for that video, and there's a clip on it where you see the email message going into the Member of Parliament's phone in the chamber. Well, you know, I used to work there. I used to be an MP. That's exactly what happens. You used to sit there, and you could be looking at your mobile phone. Obviously, it was turned down and not on ring mode, or else you'd get in trouble. But you would see messages coming in, and I often responded to constituents direct from the chamber when a debate was taking place. You know, your MPs are anticipated that there will be the ability to deal with more than one issue at the same time, and many do. So therefore, it is very simple, but we understand that not everybody feels confident. They might know the issues, but they're not confident about articulating those issues, particularly to politicians, and therefore we create the messaging. And I'll just finish with this point, Simon. I once got an email from a constituent, from a Revelation TV viewer, who thanked me and said, for all these years, I've been sitting shouting at the television when I've heard a misreport of Israel coming across, usually the BBC or some other outlet. And she says, now you have given me a voice. And that made me feel both great that we were achieving what we wanted to achieve, but people felt confident in the messaging that we were producing. So we try and make it very easy for people, we do, and it's only a case of putting your details in. And of course, if you want to amend a letter, you're perfectly able to do it. We'll have the technology allows that, and then pressing a single click of a button, and your MP gets a message, a pro-Israel message to your parliamentarian. Couldn't be easier.
Very good, very, very important. And what would you say are the opportunities and the challenges facing Israel and the Jewish people in 2019?
The biggest one, and you'll recall this message because you and I met with Michael McCann MK at the tail end of last year in the Knesset, and we asked him that very self-same question, and we'd heard him at the Christian Media Summit talking just a few days earlier, Simon, and he said the battle for Israel isn't against in Gaza, or it isn't against a direct force close to Israel, albeit that Iran is a major threat. He said the battleground is The Hague, the International Criminal Court. That is where all the people who support the BDS movement and organisations like the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign, they want to get Israel criminalised, to be able to take them to the International Criminal Court. Why do they want to do that? Because they want to take away Israel's right to defend itself. So therefore, if there was rockets firing into Glasgow or London or Cardiff or Belfast from an enemy, Britain, our government, its first responsibility is to protect us as citizens. They want to take away that right from the government of Israel. It's unacceptable. That's always going to be the threat, and that is what these people are trying to achieve, and we must stop them.
Absolutely. And the great danger with that as well is to actually condemn the Israeli Prime Minister, Israeli ministers, Israeli generals and soldiers for alleged war crimes, when we know that Israel's enemies like Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad are even putting Fatah and the Palestinian Authority into that equation now. Do not confide by the Geneva Convention. They hide behind women and children and actually want a large number of civilian targets so they can show the rest of the world, look at Israel, they're the aggressor. Of course, that's the danger, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. And the situation that we have is that despite the fact that every analysis, proper analysis by military experts of the IDF and the decisions it makes, it is amongst the most moral defence forces anywhere in the globe. And yet we have the United Nations, where we have countries that don't even give their own citizens basic protections and equality, who are making criticisms of Israel at that forum. It's quite frankly, if it wasn't so important and if it wasn't so serious, it would be laughable. But nonetheless, we have to help Israel defend itself. And one of the things that we did when we were in Jerusalem, Simon, you recall, is we got some politicians to explain how important it was for the British people who support Israel to make their voices heard. And I think it's not only important for me to say how important it is to lobby and campaign for issues connected to Israel. It was really important to hear Israeli politicians saying how important it was to hear those British voices, because it gave them courage and strength to carry on in this fight that they face for, quite frankly, their existence.
Absolutely. So let's go to this video now. This one's entitled Members of the Knesset Endorse the IBA. And this is when Michael and myself were in the Israeli parliament known as the Knesset, where we had interviews with some of Israel's leading politicians.
Now especially, perhaps more urgently than any other time in our recent history, we urge you to support the Israel-Britain alliance. Please give your full support to this crucial organization.
To all the UK citizens in the rise of anti-Semitism and leadership like Jeremy Corbyn, who are fueling up anti-Semitism against Israel, against the Jewish community in your homeland, I call all of you to join the Israel-Britain alliance and campaign in order to bring out the truth of what's happening in Israel, of the truth and standing up with the Jewish community in the UK.
Hello, my name is Amir Ohana. I'm a member of the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, representing Likud party. I do send my regards to all of you and wish that everyone who supports Israel and everyone who supports Israel and Britain relations would join the campaign of Israel-Britain alliance back in the UK.
Hi, I'm Michael McCann from the Israel-Britain Alliance, and I'm outside the Knesset in Jerusalem. I'm here to partner with Simon Barrett and Revelation TV to bring you a brand new show, the Knesset Report. We're going to bring you news from the only democracy in the Middle East, Israel.
And hopefully, I'm praying as well that you'll see those programmes coming soon to Revelation TV. Now, something so dynamic about being in the Knesset, the Israeli parliament. It's very disorganised, unlike our own, but also where passions are very high. And we know that Israel's going into election mode. But how important is it that we understand the feelings and the viewpoints that Israeli members of parliament have in terms of Anglo-Israeli relations?
Well, Simon, I think, and I hope and pray like you, we're going to see that new programme on Revelation TV very soon. But I think the importance of it is that I can't think of any other channel that gives you any direct news from Israel, and we hear about Israel from their politicians. I don't think there's any channel. You hear the odd maybe clip, mostly from people who are trying to attack Israel on British television and some channels which are available through Sky or whatever. But bottom line is there isn't an organisation or a channel that brings you direct news from those politicians, and we're trying to buck that trend. And I think people would be really interested to learn about the particular challenges that politicians in Israel face. Incidentally, most of them are about the things that we care about as well. I always said that as a politician that all problems are local. It's about the whole outside your house and the road. It's about bus services. It's about, you know, local services provided by your local council. It's about picking up the phone and asking if you can get an old, couch or an old chair picked up and taken to the dump. It's all those things which are about local services. And don't forget that whilst Israel faces all these existential threats in its borders, it still has to deal with the basic political issues that people across the globe face every single day. And I think if we can bring that sort of relevance to the viewers of Revelation TV and beyond, then we're doing a good job.
Absolutely. One issue I think we have to discuss, and one of the challenges facing the Jewish community, particularly here in the UK, Michael, is unfortunately and sadly the rise of Jew hatred that we're seeing in our society today. The fact is there's been a recent news report put out by the Daily Mail saying how, because of this climate of anti-Semitism, that something like, according to my notes, over 3,380 applications have been put in to the German embassy in London for British Jews to gain German citizenship, because the German government introduced a new law claiming that any Jewish victim of the Holocaust who can really trace their ancestry back to Germany have a right to free citizenship. Isn't this a troubling trend?
I think there's a troubling trend. There might be different reasons for that, because we know that many people also look to see if they had any Irish relatives in order they could get an EU passport, because it may be connected to the whole Brexit issue. But nonetheless, I think there's strong evidence that people are making decisions that this isn't a safe environment in which to live, and they're thinking about their future and their family's future. I think it is utterly extraordinary that in 2018, after we've come through some world events which have demonstrated about how man's inhumanity to man in terms of the Nazi regime, that we could be potentially facing those types of problems. Not potentially, we are facing those types of problems again, and we've got significant political players like the leader of Her Majesty's opposition, Jeremy Corbyn, who, and I make no bones about it, and I'll say it anywhere, is an anti-Semite. Okay? So I'm not going to, if he wants to sue me, sue me. He's an anti-Semite. I know him. I know what he believes in, and I know how he distorts his position in order to claim that he's been an anti-racism all his life. Well, if that's the case, Jeremy, you're not very good at being an anti-racist, because you've got people in your party who are Jew haters, and that is unacceptable. So the way you deal with it is expose it every time the opportunity, because there are people, sadly, who are racist against people who have got a different colour of skin. There's people who have got racism against people who speak a different language. You do have that xenophobia in our society. How do you deal with it? You expose it. And that's what we should be doing every day that we experience it, every day we see it, calling it out for what it is.
So let's have a look now at these chilling statistics put together by the CST that provides security and protection for the Jewish community here in Britain. Some very chilling figures, thankfully put together there by the Community Service Trust that provides protection and analysis on anti-Semitism for the Jewish community and also for the British government. Some of those statistics there are remarkably chilling, Michael, particularly when one of the great dangers is the failure of Jeremy Corbyn and the leadership of the Labour Party to tackle the rise of Jew hatred within the parliamentary Labour Party and the Labour Party as a whole, which the great danger is that allows anti-Semitism to become mainstream. What are the dangers if the Labour Party don't get to grips with this, if our society doesn't get to grips for the future of the Jewish community and also ultimately the future for our democracy and our very society itself?
Well, I've got bad news for you. The Labour Party is, in my opinion, finished. Because people think it's all about Jeremy Corbyn. It's not. Jeremy Corbyn now, the people who believe in his politics now control the whole Labour Party. So he's installed a new General Secretary who believes in what he believes in. All the candidates, all the new candidates that will come into the Labour Party will be assessed by momentum to determine whether or not they can stand as Labour candidates. So what you'll see is a gradual decrease through retirement and other means where moderate Labour MPs will leave and they'll be replaced by hardcore, hard-left Trotskyite individuals. And therefore, even when Jeremy Corbyn leaves that position of leadership, the person that will follow him will be another person who will be cut out of the same mould and same belief system. So the only way you're going to stop it is to stop them ever getting into power. It's as simple as that. And that's a difficult thing to do because you don't know what issues can befall a government. Brexit is a classic one for us all just now, which can lead to people being disillusioned, not voting, and it leaves open a door where extremists can fill that void, and that's where the danger really lies. The problem with someone like Jeremy Corbyn, he's got an extremely poor history in these matters. Have all been exposed, handing over wreaths to celebrate the death of terrorists, the things, not being able to utter the name of Israel as a country because his hatred is so deep of the Jewish state. And, you know, it's an exceptionally worrying time for British politics, and we had a conversation off air about the quality of politicians that are coming through as well. And it's deeply disturbing that we're in a position where a whole series of chaotic issues could collide together and potentially give you Jeremy Corbyn as our next British Prime Minister.
Frightening. I think it reminds me of that front page of The Sun for the 1992 election campaign when I think Neil Kinnock was challenging John Major, and The Sun had a title with the last person to leave Britain, please turn the light out. And I think that more applies to Jeremy Corbyn than anyone else, I think.
Don't forget, but Neil Kinnock, because everything's connected. You know, the 60 degrees of separation. Neil Kinnock resented Tony Blair's success as a Prime Minister because Tony Blair did what he had never done, which was become the Prime Minister. And when Ed Miliband became the leader of the opposition, and from my experience, direct experience, one of the worst Labour Party leaders that I've ever seen, then the position was that Neil Kinnock welcomed him, saying, we've now got our party back, if you remember his words at the time. And it was the changes that Ed Miliband made, famously or infamously introducing a £3 opportunity to join and vote for a Labour leader, which gave us Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, well, yeah. You have to go back to the party and rejoin your party and sort out the mess. But that's, I think, quite a lot more than that, Michael. Anyway, so when it comes to Israel, I suppose one of the biggest issues, and everyone will be watching very, very closely this year, is on April the 9th. And Israel has called for early general elections, 7 months early. What do you think some of the big issues are going to be in this, which will be a very heated election campaign for Israel, in which Benjamin Netanyahu, the current Prime Minister, is seeking another election victory?
Well, you know, Bill Clinton famously said it's the economy, stupid. And don't forget that people who live in Israel get the same fears and concerns and look to the same issues that we do over here. I always, as a human being, forget about the fact that I was a politician, always wanted my children to do better than I did. And my parents had that same ambition for the 5 children that they had. And I don't think there's anybody in the country that would share a different view. Israelis have the same view, and therefore it'll be the economy, and Israeli economy is booming and doing really well. And the other flank where politicians can become vulnerable in Israel is security. And there, I think there's a strong record of the Israeli government looking after its people. Some people can argue that some of the things that I've done, would create further problems, but many think that Bibi Netanyahu has done all the right and correct things, which is a bit of a difficult juggling act when you consider the volatility within the public domain in Israel when it comes to politics and politicians.
Absolutely, and what makes it so interesting, I think Israel has the most, in a sense, when it comes down to elections, one of the most purest democratic nations in the world, particularly as we know that they don't have a first-past-the-post system, but have proportional representation. So, I mean, even some of the small, insignificant parties can even get a member of Knesset elected, and there are no constituencies in Israel. So it's all based on the ballot system, and then of course then it's a horse rigging when they actually then form a government and trying to see how the whatever party has the most votes is asked by the president to then form a government, and then we have a whole mishmash of different parties coming together to form a coalition, and so therefore anything that's promised an election manifesto can go out the window as either Likud or Labour form their own party.
Well, my view is that's why I always favour first past the post, because you know what you're getting. As soon as horse trading has to begin, it's always behind the scenes and people don't know what they're getting. And I have hands-on experience of that when local government in Scotland introduced proportional representation. I knew all the horse trading that went on there. But it's a really interesting time, and one thing we can be assured of, it will not be a quiet conversation.
No, absolutely. And also, according to my notes here, one of many Israeli political commentators have stated that Prime Minister Netanyahu's timing for the general election was far from coincidental. They say the Prime Minister, they argue, is gunning to secure a re-election before an indictment is handed down, under the assumption that the Attorney General would shy away from pressing political charges against Israel's longest-serving leader in the throes of election campaign. Clearly, that's put out by the left in Israel, but what are your thoughts?
Well, let me say that there's no bigger demonstration of Israel's credentials as a democracy than the fact that an Arab judge in Israel convicted a former Israeli Prime Minister and sent him to jail, Ehud Olmert.
Yes.
And so therefore the situation is that we know how strong the democracy is. I think Bibi Netanyahu's coalition was starting to crumble. There were people peeling off at the sides, and it's unusual because there's 120 members of the Knesset, and in terms of the whole concept of the structure of government it would appear was designed never to give any political party an overall majority, so therefore coalitions had to be made. So therefore I think that's a significant element of the timing of the election. But you know something, one of the biggest thing about the charges that Bibi Netanyahu allegedly faces is that they're all over the place. Nobody's quite sure of what's going on. And then some of the stuff that I've read, I don't claim to be an expert in it, is that they're not even corruption at all, because they're the basic things that you would have as the trappings of being the senior statesman of an individual country. I mean, the First Minister of Scotland, the Prime Minister of our country, the First Minister in Wales, and whoever leads the Northern Ireland Assembly will have the trappings of that office. And many people might not know where they are, but, for example, they get huge pensions. If you've served one term as a First Minister or Prime Minister, you're entitled to a huge pension for the rest of your life. You're entitled to a certain type of travel and so on and so forth. So therefore, I'm unsure about whether or not Bibi Netanyahu is guilty of anything, but he will always be attacked from the left of politics by his strong stance on the various issues that he has to contend and deal with as the Prime Minister of Israel.
Couldn't agree more with you on that one, Michael. Also, they're saying that, the left could mount a challenge, particularly as a guy called Benny Gantz, who's a former Benjamin Netanyahu's chief of staff and was in charge of Israel's military operation against Hamas in the summer of 2014 in Gaza, could be someone that could challenge Bibi Netanyahu, primarily because he could challenge Netanyahu's image of Mr. Security, which is the number one issue when it comes down to the Israeli electorate. When they decide to vote, they always vote on which prime minister or which leader will provide us with the best security. And for once, it looks like the left may have a potential candidate, but does he have the charisma to actually win over the Israeli electorate?
Well, I think the charisma is something that Netanyahu has in spades, and therefore he's got a big advantage there. I said, but the Labour Party is weak in Israel. It previously has triumphed in past decades, but it's weak just now. And I think the strongest element in recent times would have been when it formed the Zionist Union coalition, which failed to oust Bibi Netanyahu's coalition in the last election. I think every poll that you read and the public opinion in Israel that I watch is all telling people that there's going to be another Netanyahu victory, and he would be able to put through another coalition successfully once again. Whether it's as large as previous coalitions will be difficult to say. We'll have to wait to see what the Israeli electorate do. As the only democracy in the Middle East, but remember, we're not having this conversation about, say, for example, the Palestinian Authority, who have got their leader is Mahmoud Abbas, who was elected in 2005 for a 4-year term and is still serving.
Absolutely, which is an incredible comparison to actually make. Michael, you know, this year marks the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's 10th anniversary as Israel's Prime Minister, and has gone down in history as Israel's longest-serving Prime Minister, which is an incredible, remarkable feat knowing Israeli politics. What do you think his success boils down to as a leader, not only of Israel, but also as a leader of the free world?
Well, I don't think he's always been successful, because he has had his failures to contend with as well. And I think you're right. I think he'll surpass David Ben-Gurion as the longest.
He's passed already.
He's passed it already. Well, I defer to your greater knowledge, Simon. I think he's been seen to be a strong leader. I think when the Israeli people ran out of confidence with previous leaders who have tried to have successful negotiations with the Palestinians on future peace, that they have looked to Bibi Netanyahu as a person who has been most realistic in relation to those negotiations and how they get a peaceful settlement. And he's a tactician. He very carefully works out how he gets through each problem that faces him. And that isn't always necessarily a good thing in terms of the longer-term realpolitik. I have my own experience of that from my political times, where I saw people who would make decisions to get them through that day or that week, but wouldn't think of the consequences of that decision 5 or 10 years down the road. So there are weaknesses in that leadership style, but so far he's ticked all the boxes for the Israeli electorate, because they have returned him, and as you say, he's now become the longest-serving Israeli PM.
Absolutely.
No mean feat.
And I think one of the main reasons why he's able to achieve this is because he hasn't surrendered land for peace. And he's understood the Israeli electorate are incredibly mistrusting of any Israeli politician or leader that wants to renegotiate land for peace, because every time that Israel has given away her precious land, Israel's faced nothing but greater terrorist attacks, greater violence against Israeli civilians. So there is a clear warning here, I think, to those on the centre-left that they do enter into negotiations and are willing to give up more territory. The Israeli electorate haven't elected someone from the centre-left since Ehud Barak back in 1999, who took that position.
Yeah. I think people should remember that in terms of the Israeli fears about that question, they are not based on guesswork. There were no settlements, so-called settlements, before 1967. Because that was only created after the Arab armies started to amass on the border and were going to attack Israel. And then you rightly point out that Israel handed back Gaza. And what happened there? Immediately after they did it, Hamas took over and started firing rockets in, and they've been firing them ever since. So it's not just educated guesswork that the Israeli politicians are taking part in terms of assessing the security threat they face. It's actual real-life experience. When they move out, the terrorists move in, and they can't allow that to happen.
Absolutely. And also, this is something I think many in the Jewish communities in Europe have to come to terms with, isn't it? That it's really the Israeli electorate who actually decide who they elect as their politician. They're the ones living in Israel. They're the ones facing the daily threats. And however it may be very popular to say, you know, we support a two-state solution, but the two-state solution died in 2000 with the second intifada. So isn't there a re-evaluation needed, particularly as we've seen, whether it's in Britain or whether it's in the United States, that whole centre-left ground of support for Israel politically is kind of vanished overnight.
Let me give you 2 examples from our country. First of all, the government didn't create the outcome in Brexit. The people created that. And the fact of the narrowness of the decision doesn't matter. They made there was a clear will that the people wanted to make a decision on this. The government gave them that decision, and Brexit was voted upon. In the same way, each general election, we elect you get who you vote for. And, you know, the fact that we've got a minority government in the UK, which is blown every which way but loose in recent weeks because of the whole Brexit issue, is because we, as individuals, voted for that government. So never blame the democratic system for the outcome. Just be grateful that you've got democratic politics in the first place, because many countries don't.
Absolutely. I suppose one of the other things we need to look at, and this is the biggest threat, I think, facing Israel, that sadly we could see a major war break out between Israel and Iran and Hezbollah in 2019. And the fact is that we have, like, for example, there is something like according to Israeli security experts, something like Iran has over 80,000 troops and militias under its control. Many of them are within 30 miles of Israel's border on the Golan Heights. Iran's terrorist proxy, known as Hezbollah, the genocidal Islamist terrorist organization, has anywhere between 160 and 180,000 rockets and missiles aimed at Israel, with the capacity of hitting Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. And clearly, these are red lines for Israel. How do you think that Israel will respond to Iranian provocation and the build-up of Iranian troops near Israel's border?
Well, I think one of the advantages that Israel has is that they have a better trained army, they have a more experienced army, and ultimately, if anyone tries to attack Israel, then they will be defeated. It is that simple. But there is no question that the Iranian government and the resources it has available to it would create havoc should they start a war, but they would never win it. But one thing that always strikes me when I hear of this, and I don't in any way underestimate the threats, is that ultimately Iran's very good at talking. And we hear their leaders on television, be they religious or non-religious, telling everybody about the great Satan and how terrible Israel is. But they're good talkers, but they don't seem to put enough a lot into action. And that's ultimately because I think they're cowards. And they won't deliver on the things that they'll say they'll deliver, because they know that they will face the might of an army which has not only got its political compass in the right, its moral and political compass in the right place, but it can defeat the resources that are available to Iran. So yeah, there would be problems. It's a threat that's going to be ever present in this part of our world. But I think the fact that Israel is so well equipped to deal with any attack holds the democracy of Israel in good stead for the future.
Let's have a look at this video now that's been aired on Iranian state television, in which not only do they threaten Israel with their rockets and missiles, but also Europe and the rest of the world. And this was shown to us thanks to the excellent work carried out by Memory.
ایران در سال 1394 برای اولین بار موشک بالستیک دوربرد خود را که تا لحظه اصابت به هدف قابلیت هدایت و کنترل از راه دور را دارد آزمایش کرد. این موشک که عماد نام دارد 2500 کیلومتر برد دارد و از روسیه تا شرق اروپا، غرب چین، بخش اعظم هند و شمال شرق قاره آفریقا را میتواند به آسانی هدف قرار دهد.
Excellent translation work done by Memory there. Michael, we see there that the Iranians are trying to show off their missile capabilities. Not only do they threaten to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, but they're a threat to the kind of moderate Sunni Arab states in the Middle East. And now they're saying that Europe's under threat. So, you know, how much of a threat is Iran to not only the security and stability of the Middle East, but also the security of Europe and ultimately our own security?
Well, there'll be people who are far better advised and more knowledgeable than me about their actual security threat. But, you know, we're just approaching the 40th anniversary of the Iranian Revolution. And when it comes to equality, freedom of speech, and all the other things which normal societies are measured by, then Iran fails in every reasonable test, and anyone who attempts to stand up against the regime is brutally taken down. So, you know, I've got Iranian relatives in my family, and many of them left and can't go back to Iran because of what took place during that revolution. I think that they are bullies, and they use the weaponry that they've got to threaten others without a shadow of a doubt. I think that the Obama nuclear deal gave them access to resources, financial resources that they wouldn't have had, and I think that deal was a dereliction of the duties of the leader of the free world when he, at all costs, attempted to get a deal to show his credentials and to say that he actually had a legacy that people could remember. The bottom line is that it's just allowed them, the Iranians, to put more money into funding terrorism and more money to fund their aspiration, which is hegemony for the whole Middle East region. However, there is another side to it, Simon, because the fight between Sunni and Shia has meant that unusual allies have came to the surface, and we have more Arabic countries now privately seeking terms with Israel in order to combat the threat that the Iranian theocracy presents.
Yeah, challenging, interesting time. So let's have a look at this excellent video produced by Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, looking at Iran as Iran remembers 40 years of the Islamic Revolution.
True or false? Israel sent agricultural experts to Iran. True. Israel sent engineers to help build Tehran's airport. True. Israel sent rescue teams to help earthquake victims in Iran. True. Hard to believe? That's because all this happened before 1979. But 40 years ago, that year, the Ayatollahs turned Iran into an Islamist theocracy and declared war on Israel. Now, who has suffered most? The people of Iran. As their freedom is squashed, food prices soar. Now, I've promised to help the people of Iran wherever possible. Last year, I offered once again to send relief to victims of another earthquake in Iran. The regime refused. I launched a site in Farsi to provide water expertise to Iranians suffering from a severe drought. The regime refused this offer as well. Well, fortunately, thousands of Iranians visited the site. You see, I keep my promises. Not so the regime in Tehran.
اونچنان رونق اقتصادی ایجاد بکنه و اونچنان مردم رو از لحاظ درآمد سرشار بتونن در اختیارشون قرار بگیره.
Well, they didn't give the money to the people of Iran. You see, the nuclear agreement gave Iran more than $40 billion in 2017 in increased oil production. But the tyrants of Tehran did not invest in buildings, in roads, in schools, in hospitals. Instead, the money went into the pockets of senior regime officials, and the other part of it went to fund terrorism in the Middle East and beyond. The people of Iran deserve better. The people of Israel stand with the people of Iran. I hope that one day our peoples and our countries will once again be able to work side by side. And when that day comes, I promise you, we will all benefit.
And there we have the Israeli Prime Minister providing excellent moral clarity, as usual, particularly on the issue of Iran. What's astonishing, Michael, and watching that video produced by the Israeli Prime Minister and the Israeli government press office, is the fact that Iran used to be Israel's closest allies in the Middle East. Under the Shah, and cooperation between the two nations was incredible. But now Iran is probably Israel's biggest enemy. They are nothing but the world's leading state sponsor of international terrorism. They have a nuclear weapons program, which they have now breached the recent treaty in which they are looking to enrich uranium once again. I believe they're in the process of doing that. They support some of the most genocidal terrorist organizations in the world, like Hezbollah and Hamas, even though Hamas are Sunni. They also have international terror networks around the world. They persecute and attack Christians in Iran, and that's for human rights abuses in Iran are absolutely shocking. Isn't it time that we really saw an end to this evil regime?
Yeah, but sadly our world has been scarred over the last number of decades with wars that have broken out. Some would argue that those wars have broken out in false pretences and false premises. I don't necessarily agree with that. When you look at the regime in Iraq and Saddam Hussein and others, and people using the benefit of 20/20 hindsight in order to reach a different conclusion, I think there is no doubt that the Iranian regime is based in fear and it's based in persecution of its own people. The thing that really disturbs me is people that hold a very liberal and left-wing agenda say nothing about it. Jeremy Corbyn professes to support all sorts of communities, minorities, but when it comes to Iran's persecution of those same communities and minorities, he says absolutely nothing. In fact, he participates in their state TV and takes payment from their state TV, or did take payment from their state TV functions. So therefore, we have this contradiction with people from Britain and in Europe and the world who hold a so-called progressive left-wing agenda, but yet they deprive the ordinary people of Iran of being able to reach those same views simply because their regime that they will say nothing about and never criticise is holding their people in contempt and, quite frankly, ruling them by fear. Ultimately, whether the world ever has an appetite for taking on Iran, I don't know. But what we can do is that we can marginalise it and make sure world communities know how bad it is.
Absolutely. Michael, with less than a minute, can you prepare our viewers about some of the challenges that Israel will face this year in 2019 and how they should respond?
Yeah. In terms of the challenge that Israel perpetually faces is one about its legitimacy. And we must combat every single attempt to claim that Israel is not a democratically legitimate country. So that will be taking them on in Israel Apartheid Week. It will be taking them on in the Al-Quds rally if it does come down our streets again in London this year. It will be taking them on when the BDS movement doesn't want to buy Israeli goods. But of course, nobody will give up their mobile phones because, of course, that is Israeli proprietary technology.
Absolutely. Michael, really good to have you back on the set of the Middle East Reports, and yeah, really good to have you on the guest, so thank you.
Thanks, Simon.
And I just want to thank you for watching today's programme. Who knows what challenges lay ahead for Israel in 2019, but one thing Israel can be assured of, that our Christian support remains solid, and we stand defiant against the hate, the lies, and the sheer violence that is targeting against the one and truly democratic state of Israel. So we know this year we're going to stand with Israel.
I want to tell you a story. A story about a special place for me. An ancient, cherished land where the mountain breeze is clear as wine.